This is the main event!
Finally watched The Iron Claw on Max from A24 Studios. For people that I'm sure everybody knows, it's about the Von Erichs and all that. I have a few notes about the movie and a review for the movie, and then I wanted to talk about it with compared to like real life and how it went. First of all, it was a really good movie. I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. It was emotional, and it's hard to say. It's weird to say you had fun with it because it's such an effed up subject. Like if anybody knows the Von Erich family, the worst part about it, and I was thinking about this while I'm watching. I'm like, anybody that doesn't know the story, and they're like, oh, this is interesting. I kind of want to know about, triumph and tragedy and whatever of the Von Erich family. Like, you watch the movie, you're dropped into it for the first time, and it's like, you start on the high note. I mean, Kevin kind of sets you up with it, or, the narration of Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich sets you up, and he's like, people say my family's cursed and whatever. So you kind of know what's coming, sort of. But any, like, normal person thinking normal movie, you're like, okay, so things get pretty bad. And then you're like, well, they're going to get better, right? Nope. They just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Like, things are just going to consistently keep getting worse and going horribly for the Von Erich family. It's not going to turn around. It's just bad. Like, now, Von Erichs in, like, the 2000s, things are fine, because the Von Erichs are literally just Kevin and his clan. And according to, like, the final, like, at the end of the movie, how documentaries, they'll be like, they'll show you a black screen with writing, they'll be like, oh, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, kind of a final wrap-up. Apparently, Kevin and his wife did buy a large ranch, which is there was their dream, and they had a bunch of kids, and then their kids had a butt ton of kids, and then like they literally all live on the ranch. They all have their own little homes on the ranch, and it's a big Von Erich clan all on the Kevin's ranch, whatever the hell it's called. Cool. I think it's awesome. That was like their dream. If the movie's to be believed, like they wanted this big family ranch where Kevin's dream originally was all of his brothers would move onto it with their wives and have kids and etc. Well, that didn't happen, but obviously. But the movie itself was decently entertaining. There were a few things that were like, I feel was rushed. I feel like this movie, I don't know what the total runtime was. 2 hours, 12 minutes, and factor in about 12 minutes for credits at the end. So, say about a 2-hour movie. It really, to get a good hold of it, a good claw on it, forget that. Forget I said that. Anyway, to get a good read on everything, it really needed to be around 3 hours, like a 3-hour runtime for this movie. Because, like, one thing specifically I thought about, because I kept waiting for MJF plays Lance Von Erich. For people that don't know, he was not a real Von Erich. Lance, like, all the brothers were either dead or injured, and Kevin needed another Von Erich to team with. So, because, God bless him, he was a great wrestler. Kevin was not the most charismatic of the bunch. He was not the one that everybody was like, oh man, he's gonna do, big things. He was the oldest, but he was not the top, Like, David was the workhorse, Kerry was the body, and he had charisma. David had charisma too, but he was known as he was the in-ring guy. He was kind of like the total package. They wanted to make him NWA champion. Unfortunately, he passed away way too soon, and before that could happen, they bring in this guy with blonde hair, and he's got a great look, and they're like, oh, he's a cousin, because for those that don't know, Fritz used to team with a guy that was his kayfabe brother back when they were pretending to be the bad guys from WW2 back in the old days. It was Waldo Von Erich, and they said, oh, he's Waldo's son, and he's coming in to wrestle with his cousins, and they called him Lance, and nobody bought it. Everybody knew. They're like, he's not Waldo's son. Even if he was like the real Waldo, if it was his real son, they might have given him a little bit of leeway, but he wasn't. He wasn't related to the family at all. He was just some guy. But MJF plays him. You see him in a scene where it's like you blink and you miss it kind of thing. They just show him in the ring with Kevin on the apron. He wins. Kevin's looking forlorn, and he claps, and he's like, "Oh, yay, we won," whatever. And it's like a montage of like Kevin being depressed kind of thing. So I don't like they don't spend any time on Lance, which I guess they were like, oh, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't important. I guess so. It points towards the desperation of Fritz and the WCCW territory at the time, though. Really, the desperation towards the end of WCCW as a whole, I feel like needed to be explored more. Because there was an angle where Fritz pretended to have a heart attack that actually won most tasteless storyline of the year in Wrestling Observer. There was a lot. Business crashing. They didn't cover at all their partnership with the AWA, and that was a pretty big deal, where Kerry fought against Jerry Lawler. We actually reviewed Super Clash on this podcast before. I want to say Super Clash 2, maybe 3, or it might have been 3. I don't remember. I think it was 2. It was a big show, lots of blood. Good. It was a good match, all in all. And we talk about how Kerry was. They put it over a little bit in the movie, but Kerry was not the brightest bulb in the drawer. I hate to speak ill of the dead, but it's not really a secret. And he was messing around with the blade that he was going to use to blade his forehead later. And he was either messing around with it, or he forgot it was in his hand or something, and he accidentally sliced open his bicep backstage when he was like putting his robe on or trying to scratch himself or something, and he like sliced his bicep open, and Jerry Lawler was like, oh my god. So now you'll see him work the arm in the match to explain why Kerry's bleeding out of the arm now. So Lawler was a genius. He doesn't get the credit he deserves, but yeah, so that happened. The film, I feel like, other than that, where they brush over a few things, and I feel like some things were rushed, the film was very good. I would definitely say you should watch it. The casting, I thought, was excellent, except for 2. One is not terrible. The other one is awful. The first one that's not terrible, but it's not great, was Zac Efron as Kevin. Was okay. But I feel like it's, no offense to Kevin, but I feel like he's flattering Kevin Von Erich, like, by playing him. Because Kevin was always ripped, and he was always in shape, but man, Zac was freaking jacked, and, like, tan, like, Hulk Hogan, Starrcade, main event kind of tan, you know what I'm saying? Like, Zac was just buff, ripped, chiseled, tan, like, he put Kevin to shame on his best day. And Kevin was always in great shape and always, looking good that way. Other than that, it wasn't terrible. The one that was terrible was Ric Flair. Everyone else, I was like, man, even Harley Race, like the guy they got to play Harley Race. I'm like, where are you going to find a guy that even kind of looks like him? They did. He did well. All of the casting was really good. Then you get to Ric Flair, and it's like, what the... Why? Why this guy? Of all people, why this guy? I would have... He probably wouldn't have done it, but my first thought was like Bradley Cooper maybe could have done it. I can't think of anybody else, because me and my friends were trying to brainstorm about it. We couldn't think of any other actor that could accurately portray Ric Flair, because you got to not only look like him, but you got to wrestle. He didn't do a lot. Like, most of the time when they showed wrestling matches, it was like on TV, and it was the real match, but from an angle where you only see him from the back. So they avoided showing the face, whatever, which was clever. But with Flair, he's got to do at least a couple of wrestling moves for the scene he was in. He's got to look good, but he's also got to talk. I feel like this guy didn't study Ric Flair for more than like 5 minutes. He's like, okay, show me a promo of Ric Flair. They show it to him. He's like, got it. Boom. And then he just walks out there with his stupid blonde wig. Like, ugh. No. Bad casting. Getting to the real stuff here, though, comparing it to reality, they completely left off a sixth brother, which was Chris. People pointed that out right away. According to them, it was because things were so dark. You don't want to have a third brother ending his own life, which did, because Mike did, Chris did, and then Kerry did. Kerry was the third and final ending of his own life of the brothers. Yeah, I get that, but you're just going to pretend like Chris Von Erich didn't even exist? And what made his story so much worse was Chris had health problems from the beginning, and he really wanted to be a wrestler like his brothers. I think if Fritz in real life was like the Fritz in the movie, Fritz probably pushed him from birth. It was like, you're going to be a wrestler, damn it. And Chris was like, yeah, I want to wrestle with my brothers. I want to get out there. I'm going to be, and I'm a Von Erich, damn it. That's what I got to do. But he had health problems, and he had to take a certain medicine that kind of made him physically weaker. And because of that, he would get injured doing just like basic stuff. The move they gave Mike, in the movie The Iron Claw, Mike's injury, like the shoulder injury, is accurate. How he got it is not accurate. In reality, he gets a shoulder injury over in, oddly enough, WCCW was huge in Israel. So they would frequently fly to Israel and put on shows. Don't know why. This Texas promotion with the most honky redneck white boys you'd ever seen is super popular with Israel, or with Israelis. So, but either way, they flew over there a lot, and he did get injured. I couldn't find the exact cause of the shoulder injury, but he got his shoulder injury over there. And then during the surgery, he did go into like a coma or whatever, and he got toxic shock syndrome out of it, and it just ruined him. Which, I had got roasted on a previous podcast because I had said he had a stroke. He didn't have a stroke. He got toxic shock syndrome, but the effects were similar. His motor skills were blown, like just crapped out, because it was like a lack of oxygen getting to his brain, basically. He never recovered from it, and it messed him up. And you could tell, like, on the mic, in the ring, he wasn't great to begin with, but especially after that, he was like, that ruined him. It was sad. But that's why he eventually, like, he couldn't handle it anymore. They left this part out. They make it seem like just one day he's like, F it, and he downs a bunch of pills, drinks a beer, goes out and, with a gun and, does what he does to himself. But in reality, he had apparently tried this multiple times. Was not on any kind of watch, by the way, which was weird. But yeah, it was multiple times he'd tried this, which makes it even darker and sadder. Like I said, Mike never recovered, unfortunately. And he succeeded in taking his own life. But in the movie, he goes for a drop kick and lands weird on his shoulder and destroys his shoulder and whatever. In reality, that was Chris went for a drop kick, came down weird on his arm and snapped his arm. It was just like basic stuff like that. Apparently he had injured himself multiple times with just like basic moves, because his bones were pretty brittle and he just wasn't athletically gifted like that. But he kept trying, and that kind of depressed him to the point of where he took his own life. But they left that out of the movie because they said, it's a little too dark. Like, okay, like, everything in this movie is dark, man. Just go for the gold at this point. Like, this story's been told over and over. If you're going to do a movie about the Von Erichs, just throw it in there. Because I do think that's kind of, I hesitate to say dishonoring anything, but it's just, you're just pretending like this guy never existed, so it kind of sucks, but I don't mind them not going into detail about Jack Jr. and how he passed away. Jack Jr. was the oldest boy that he passed when he was like less than, he might have been 5, maybe, but I think something about he was outside and they lived in a trailer and he got electrocuted with something from on the trailer hitch, I think, if I remember the story correctly, and then he, like, that didn't end him. He, like, went face down in a rain puddle and drowned. So, extremely weird circumstances. But that started it all, and then Kevin was the next oldest, and since Jack Jr. was gone, he was now the oldest. The stuff with Carrie, they rushed a lot, because Carrie really was a bona fide star. There was a lot about his journey that they really brushed over. And they made it seem like he won the NWA title from Ric Flair at the David Von Erich Memorial. And then that night, he hopped on his motorcycle, intoxicated, got into a wreck, and lost his foot. It's not the chain of events. Like, if you don't know the reality, that's what you're thinking. It was much later on he got into that wreck, and yeah, it did mess him up. The amount of time he was out of the ring, though, was actually not that long. He got back in fairly quickly, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I guess he was in constant pain. I get that. There are a lot of rumors surrounding the foot situation, too. There's an old Texas rumor, apparently, where they hadn't amputated the foot. It was like an ankle thing, originally, and the ankle was destroyed. And they did surgery, he's laid up, and he's doped up on a bunch of, whatever from the hospital. He smelled a cheeseburger or food of some kind down the hall, and he was so doped up, he didn't think about, my foot, and he got out of bed and totally destroyed what they had done during surgery. Again, that's a big rumor I heard from a Texan, by the way. So I don't know if it's true. It could just be hearsay. I mean, it literally is hearsay because I can't prove anything. Nobody can. Most of the stuff they showed seemed fairly accurate. I did not know about Fritz inviting Jerry Jarrett onto his ranch to threaten him against purchasing WCCW. Or I think at that time it was the UCWA or UWCA or something. I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, I guess he warned him against that, or not warned him, but threatened him, according to the film. Another thing they brush over, or they just didn't, not necessarily brushed over, but they didn't cover, is Fritz at the end of his life was losing it. I think he got dementia or something real bad, and he handed, this was after all 3 of the other boys had done what they did and ended their lives, and Fritz handed a pew-pew to Kevin when they were in an argument, and he's like, if you were a man like your brothers, you'd do it too, and Kevin was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that, Dad. I don't know. It's sad. They did, I also don't know if that one part happened where Kevin showed up at the ranch just as Carrie ended his life. I don't think that happened. And then he sees Fritz. Fritz basically blames Kevin for it, and Kevin almost chokes him, chokes the life out of him. I don't know if that happened. I don't know if that's accurate. I do know there was a lot of tensions there. If everything in the movie, if everything between the parents and the kids was accurate in the movie, they were terrible parents, the mom and the dad. Because every time they're like, hey, I need to talk to you, they'd be like, nah, that's what your brother's for. Go talk to your brothers. I don't want to talk to you. Like, what kind of parent does that? Ever. It's nuts. And there was even one point where, because Fritz wanted Mike to be a wrestler, and Mike wasn't really feeling it. And Mike wanted to do his own thing. He wanted to be a musician, whatever. And Fritz is like, no, you're going to get in the ring. You're going to be a wrestler. You're going to join your brothers. Time to just do it, And he's forcing him. And everything Mike did, he would get on him and be rough on him. And supposedly, Kevin goes to his mom and he's like, hey, I need to talk to you. Dad's just really rough on Mike. And she said, look, you boys need to handle it amongst yourselves. I'm not getting involved. Like, oh my God. I don't know if this is real. If so, that explains why your sons all did what they did. So David, they show, was like throwing up blood and whatever at Kevin's wedding. Don't know if that's accurate. But they make it seem like he'd been sick for a while, and he still flew to Japan, and he got a ruptured intestine and passed away in his hotel room. That's kind of the official story. There's also a lot of speculation that Fritz covered up, that Fritz worked with others to cover up the fact that he actually OD'd. I don't know. I can't say for sure. Maybe, maybe not. I hope not. I mean, either way is bad, but, doing that to yourself is probably worse, I'm going to say. So I really hope he did not do that to himself, but yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot in the movie it's mostly good. Like I said, they just brush over the Lance thing. They brush over the desperation of WCCW towards the end. I don't think it did any good for or any favors for the film, because there's more interesting story. You could have honestly made two movies out of all of it. It was so crazy. But it is a very interesting story. I'm not shocked that it's been the subject, the Von Erichs have been the subject of so much of this. Documentaries and the movie, and it's crazy.
This is the main event.